I just want to welcome everybody here. We've got a great big crowd, which is exciting. I would very much like to welcome Auntie Donna to come and give us a welcome to country.
Thank you. It gives me pride to represent my community in this important cultural protocol. It shows respect for and recognition to the unique position of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australian culture and history. We are gathered on the traditional land of the Gadigal, who are one of 29 clans of the Eora Nation, which is bordered by the Hawkesbury, the Georges and the Nepean rivers. This place we are standing on today, now known as the Rocks, was originally called Talawalada. My country is Wiradjuri and my family connections are from a town called Cowra in central west New South Wales. I was born on Gadigal land and I've had the privilege to live, work and raise my 4 children on this land for most of my life. My family has grown and I'm now a proud grandmother to Aaliyah, Elijah, Lakota and baby Kalila. My grandchildren are already engaged with technology and I'm sure they'll help me navigate this strange but exciting new world that we live in. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal, their spirits and ancestors who will always remain with the land Mother Earth, and thank them for their ongoing custodianship and for allowing us to gather on their land today for this exciting conversation. I'm also very proud to be part of the oldest living culture in the world, the Aboriginal culture of Australia, with their unique and distinct heritage, cultures and identities. I pay my respects to our elders, both past and present, and we must never forget the sacrifices made by our leaders to create a better future for Aboriginal people. I do this as a reminder and as a tribute to elders and those who have gone before us to fight for land rights, justice and equity for our communities. I extend my respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from all clans and nations who are present this afternoon. I also recognise our non-Aboriginal sisters and brothers who walk beside us in this new technological world. I now offer you a warm and sincere welcome to the land of the Gadigal of the Eora Nation. Wish you a safe stay on the land and safe travel from the land. On behalf of my community and the Gadigal, I'd like to wish you all a great afternoon hearing from this panel of app developers who will shed light on current technological trends and offer valuable insights into how creative practitioners can thrive in the face of the digital invasion. In closing, we remember that this is, was and always will be Aboriginal land. Thanks everyone, have a great afternoon.
All right, well, my name is Claire Marshall and I'm going to be your MC for today, and we have some amazing panellists. But I thought just before I introduce them, you might indulge me with just a little story that I'd like to tell. So when I was a kid, I loved She-Ra, the warrior princess. Does anyone know She-Ra? Yes. Sister of He-Man, if anyone was the fan of He-Man. And when I was a kid, I used to run down to the bottom of the garden every morning before school and I'd put my hands in the air and I would say, "By the power of Castle Grayskull," because that's what She-Ra said. Because this was my way of connecting with what I loved. It was a one-way relationship. She-Ra didn't know I existed and she never gave me anything back. And then fast forward, the start of my career in TV, I was really fortunate to get a job working on the kids series Lockie Leonard. And by this stage, digital disruption had started to change things. And so one of my jobs as cross-platform director in second unit was to shoot these scenes, and in the background, we would put photo frames with chroma key in the middle of them. And then the audience would send in photographs of themselves and we'd digitally put them into the scenes. So as a kid watching television, you'd see yourself in the Leonard household. That's a whole different relationship. That's a little bit more interactive than me in the bottom of the garden with She-Ra. And I guess what I wanted to tell you guys about this is that disruption a lot at the moment we can talk about the challenges that we face when business models are changed, but there's also opportunity. And each of the panelists that I'm about to introduce, in the face of this disruption, chose to be disruptors themselves. And what they have created is almost unimaginable to me as that little girl all those years ago. So I'd like to start by welcoming to the stage Michaela Jade, who was the founder and CEO of In Digital. Do you want to come up? Beautiful. So Michaela, can you show us or tell us a little bit about how your In Digital app works?
Yeah, so we've got 2 apps now since that story was created. So we have a mobile phone app which also works on any kind of device. And Neville, who just spoke, painted this picture called a Namande. And Namandes are beings of the sandstone country in Kakadu. And this particular image comes from a place on Munmoy Station where Neville is the custodian of the story, and this artwork is 25,000 years old. So what Neville wanted to do was bring this to life in the 3D animation. So what we do is we do image recognition. So it's kind of the same as facial recognition technology, and we've got about 500 points of recognition on this artwork. And when the app sees it, he comes alive, which is really hard to see from the stage, but I'm just gonna, So anyway, he's coming alive and he's doing a cultural dance for you. And this is really important for Neville's community because the young kids have trouble going out on country and wanting to translate cultural knowledge systems. And the aunties told me one time, which was fabulous, we have to go out for more than 3 days. And I was like, well, why? And they said, well, the first day they're always in the phone. The second day the phone gets really flat and they get really cranky. And then the third day they start to listen to us. So what we wanted to do was use technology to try and translate this knowledge system. And so not only are you hearing the song and the words of an ancient song that's at least 25,000 years old, Neville is showing his children how you paint your body up for ceremony, and he's also showing the cultural dance that you do to honour Namande.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was you've got some
and
fancy looking glasses there.
This is Microsoft HoloLens. So what we've done now is create that content that we initially did with Neville and the 4 other senior traditional artists, and we've made it into 3-dimensional holograms that you can walk around and interact with now through HoloLens. Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to introduce our next disruptor, which is Keith Sue. Do you want to come up, Keith? Who is the managing director of 6/8. And I believe we have a little video for Keith as well.
A live band will do something that recorded music can't.
We love live music, and I'm sure you love live music. Everyone likes going to a gig. It should be a lot easier to access live music than what it actually is. We want to change live music in the world.
Imagine people wanting to hear live music and going, looking on their phone. Yeah, I'll try this person. Boom. An hour later, somebody shows up and they're playing music and they're having a conversation.
Why shouldn't we do that now? Why shouldn't the streets be filled with live music? You know, everything from jazz to Latin to funk through to metal, through to hip hop, country, folk. If it's music, it's on 6/8.
Cool. So tell me, Keith, how does this work?
Sure. Well, it's
Seems the obvious place to start.
it's a platform in its rawest essence, an online platform and an app that allows people to discover live musicians within the area and search for them, and then be able to book them with the click of a few buttons. What we want to achieve, and what's quite important to me though, is a step beyond that, and it's the development of a community. So in a similar way that we've seen other online platforms really take a two-sided market approach, where you build up a reputation as someone who provides a service, but you also build up a reputation as someone who consumes the service. We wanted to do the same thing, bring people that enjoy live music and want to consume live music and appreciate the art and the artists together and start a conversation there.
And when I book one of these live artists, where do they play? Do they, like, can they play in my backyard? Do they
Anywhere,
play?
and that's that's the key part of the concept, right? Is at the moment we're really restricted to where we can consume live music. It tends to be in bars or clubs or set festivals, where we come from a position that we want to open up the world to live music. So if you want to organise something down at your local beach or your local park or your backyard, you should be able to do that, following regulations, of course. But if we can open that up with community and the and local governments, then we should be able to consume live music wherever we want to.
Sounds amazing. Sounds amazing. Okay, so our next disruptor is Kate Armstrong-Smith. Kate plays in many artistic fields, but today she's going to be talking to us about Playwave. So we have So, Kate, what is Playwave?
So Playwave is a platform that has been set up in partnership between Shopfront Arts Co-op, one of the oldest youth arts organisations in Australia, over 40 years, with Shopfront in partnership with City of Sydney. And there's been a growing case over the last 15 years that young people are not engaging in the arts and the cultural sector as audiences in the same way as they used to. There's not a replenishment happening. So thanks to this partnership, we built a platform called Playwave, which recognises fundamentally the underlying habits of young people who are a digital generation and are not being disrupted. They have always had a digital space in which to engage with. So I guess instead of, we're bringing Muhammad to the mountain, instead of trying to get young people engaged in culture, we're looking at how they communicate and engage, and trying, in partnership with pretty much all the arts organisations in Sydney and throughout New South Wales, we are giving them access, so very low price tickets. We're trying to deal with the restrictions of travel and transport, and the fact that all money is digital money these days, and young people under 18 can't access money in the same way. So this platform is for 15 to 19-year-olds, and we meet them in the platforms they're congregating in, and we encourage them to come to cultural events. And a part of that is also creating live experiences for them, and in environments that make them feel more, familiar and at home.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's amazing, amazing. And last but certainly not least, can I welcome Chantal Abouchard to the stage? Chantal is the CEO and founder of the studio Mother of Dragons, if dragons are media tech startups. Chantal, can you tell us what is the studio?
So the studio is a home really for people like Kate and Keith and Michaelia. So we are a space where if you've got a new business, model, product or service in the media, entertainment, design, music, games, creative industries, and you want to be successful, come in, have a desk at the studio, and we'll help you on your way to be successful. So where our focus is very much about engaging with new technology, how you can engage with new technologies across the spectrum to create your new business model, product or service. So to do this, we've just opened the doors. We've got space for about 140 people. We're already a bit more than half full, which is super exciting, and we've got some amazing startups and scale-ups. So I'll just press that, there we go, talking about technology, there we go. So to get this happening, we're a non-profit organisation. We were founded about November 2015, and we went about gathering a whole lot of foundation partners and sponsors to really make this happen. And through our partners and sponsors, we raised about $500,000, and then were successful in getting some co-investment from the federal government, and being an anchor tenant in the new Sydney Startup Hub, which is just up the road. And can I just say, over Vivid, we're going to be opening our doors every Wednesday and Thursday night for anyone who'd like to come and visit from 5 till 7 p.m. So we're level 6.
Who's been in and seen the studio yet? Anyone? It's absolutely beautiful.
So join the
worth it.
There's all our social media. Join the meetup group. We're putting out all our events. We've got a breakfast series on Tuesday mornings. We're about to start a Thursday evening series. And then these are our residents so far, which is really exciting. So maybe a bit later I can talk about a few of the residents.
I'm about to ask.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay, so we're going to jump into some questions now. So I'm going to start with you actually, Chantal. So when we traditionally think of digital disruption, there's been a lot of talk about other industries, and there's this talk about the changing nature of consumer and kind of producer, and this kind of relationship getting kind of closer. What are some examples in the media world of startups doing this well, about this changing relationship between creator and consumer?
Maybe I should talk about some residents of the studio.
Sure.
So I'm just thinking. Uvu could be a good example of consumer. So Uvu are a platform connecting. They're really helping journalism survive. Really, they're connecting broadcasters and publishers. So they've got about 50 of the world's best broadcasters on their platform. So, billions of dollars worth of content you could never afford, and they connect that with publishers. So if you're reading an article online and it's from one of their publishers, they're connecting those two using an IBM Watson platform and artificial intelligence. Yeah, and that's all happening from the studio, which is unbelievable. So that's really exciting. So they're sort of helping journalism survive, taking it out of those platforms like Facebook and returning sort of financial gains back to the publishers and the broadcasters. Rockmelon are doing amazing stuff. They're a very early stage company. And Uvu have just closed a seed round of $3.8 million. So they're going gangbusters. Rockmelon are creating specialised content using animation for children with autism and with other, just across the spectrum of disability, and this has never been done before. So quite extraordinary what they're doing. Yeah. So they've taken their school curriculum and they're totally reinventing that for the children and for the parents.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What an amazing application.
Yeah.
So Michaela, I want to skip to you. So your app uses augmented reality, or are you calling it mixed reality now?
The HoloLens is mixed reality.
HoloLens is mixed reality. I always get this confused.
Reality.
Okay. So augmented reality, like the biggest use cases that I imagine that we can think of are Snapchat and hunting for Pokemon.
Yes.
But you're using it to tell much more precious stories. What is it about this technology that's really impactful when you use it for storytelling?
Yeah, so our peoples have told stories since time began, and we've never written them down really until we were colonised. So our natural way of storytelling is to share culture orally, through dance, through song, and augmented reality is such a perfect medium for us to continue our cultural practices of communicating this way, because it's like a natural learning. And I was just dreaming of this technology maybe 10 years ago, and then I saw it in 2012, and it was really crappy when I first saw it. It was a little video that hovered like this centimetre above it.
Where did you see it?
I saw it at the University of Canberra.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was just like a passing thing. I saw it for 5 minutes, and I went home and had a shower, and I was like, boom. We need to use this for our people, because as a child I used to go and run my fingers through the petroglyphs in the Sydney Basin in the beautiful sandstone that we have, and I never knew the stories, and it was really hard for our people to work out who are the people who own this, because I didn't know, right? I didn't know till I was 29 about my cultural heritage.
Wow.
So when I saw augmented reality, I went, wow, that's a really cool way for the right person at the right place at the right time to tell the right story. So, and everyone carries a phone now. So when you go to a cultural place, the vision is that for significant sites that traditional owners would like to share their knowledge systems with visitors to their country, that someone can put their phone there and the traditional owner has a voice at that site. It's not national parks with a sign telling us from an archaeological perspective how old the site is. It's the real true story of the site.
Is there any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists working with this kind of technology?
Yes, there is. So I'm definitely not the only one. There's a guy called Brett Levy who's taken a different dimension to this, and he's digitalised this whole Sydney landscape so you can experience what it was like before colonisation. So you can walk through the bush and you can go spear hunting out in the beautiful harbour here, and you can experience life in virtual reality, what it was like beforehand, which is kind of cool. And he does these little wireframe buildings, so you'll be able to see the Opera House in the landscape, but it doesn't dominate the landscape, it's just a wireframe. So you know where you are within the Sydney Basin based on the buildings that we all know and love, but you can really immerse yourself in what life was like before. So there's another guy, Luke Briscoe, who works for NITV, and he's doing amazing stuff with virtual reality. So in a closed system where you can go on country with traditional owners in virtual reality and experience what they have to share from their country perspective. And this is also really great for our people too, who can't return to their country for whatever reason. So it brings country to them in a way.
Wow, fantastic. So, Kate, skipping ahead. So we spoke kind of briefly, and I guess I mentioned in my story that things have changed a lot. That for me, from when I was a child to now, things have, this digital disruption has caused a lot of changes. But for young people today, I mean, this is their world. So how is their relationship to art and culture different to, say, mine or yours?
Well, I mean, to ask them, I'm not a young person anymore, so, and what's wonderful about working on Playwave is that we kind of ask the young people what they, how they engage, their experience. And they all have different information and feedback and everything, but I can give you kind of the landscape of what's happening for young people and how it's engaging, how it's affecting culture. Because we have learnt some really overall insights and themes that have happened as trying to sit in this space and work in this space. And the number one, the biggest point that has just blown my mind continually is that there are more young people under the age of 25 today, according to the World Health Organization, than there were people on the planet in the 1960s. So, and what more, 90% of that, this generation, this digital generation, are literate, and pretty much all of them, as of this year, let's say 80 or 90% are connected to the internet, and this year by a mobile phone. So to put that into perspective, in the 60s, only 20% of the population of the world was literate. And now you have an entire generation that are connected and engaging with a new space. So you think to yourself, well, I don't know, how is this is surely going to affect the way that they are going to engage in the world. Majority of those young people are not in Western countries. They are, and they don't speak English as a first language, and they are all on Facebook. So this is a very important kind of foundation to understanding where this digital generation is coming from. Then, as we started to work with the research that the state had done about young people not engaging, we found some complicating information to add to this. The government did some research and found that young people under the age of 19 were the most Googled phrase by young people in New South Wales was "I'm bored," and had little to no engagement with the concept of the arts, the concept of culture with a capital C, or the idea of the artist. So, with these kind of two kind of pieces of information, we were like, okay, you're thinking to yourself, how do you then create a platform that engages young people into the arts? Like, is this going to work? You know, so, but we found some 3 really big themes that were happening in the digital space that young people are engaging with, and we thought, let's bring them to, let's bring our platform and culture to them, and what happens and how are they engaging. And the first one of these themes is that culture is happening now in between the space between young people's phones. So, you know, we kind of, there's this stereotype of the young person on their phone for all day and hours. And Tia Uglo from Google Creative Labs said it beautifully, that people are not obsessed with screens. They're fascinated and engaging with the information that streams from their screens. It's not, they don't want to be just staring here. They want to get access to this liminal space that's being created. And so significantly, artists are no longer holding the cultural space for their communities. The cultural space is taking place in this liminal digital world between our phones. And young people are native to this space. They are creating memes and podcasts, and they're congregating on platforms and communicating, and either creating or being an audience. So this was really, this was the first kind of theme that was really important. The second one was that I remember meeting one of the gentlemen who was actually at the table with Apple when they were negotiating iTunes at the beginning of 2000. And I remember him talking about for $1 a song. And I remember him, and it was about 2008 or 9, and he pulled out his phone at the time, mobile phone, and he said, "Look at this." And he showed me the YouTube app, which had just come out. And he went, "Look at this." And he went, "Record, send to YouTube, there you go." And he said that is going to change the whole of culture. And what that, and I think it has, and what that means in summary is that we now control our own point of view. We now no longer rely on the creative industries or the media to determine the point of view for me and my community. And you know, Instagram is riding the gravy train for this. So a young person now is their own writer, their own producer, their own performer, and they can create their own audience and environment. So this is also really important for creative industries, that, that you now have an entire group of people who are creating their own narratives, and this is very exciting for communities that didn't have a voice before, including young people. Which brings me to the I guess more last complicating theme that isn't as positive or interesting, or it's very interesting, but is that these platforms get young people to generate, as they do anyone who's on them, like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, hours and hours of content and engagement. But they've replaced the word creativity with innovation, and young people rarely are called creative in their output. And so this is something we thought was very interesting, where we started with Playwave, and we thought, well, what if we created a liminal space in which artists and young people were able to be together? Because actually, the really exciting thing is young people and artists have more in common today than ever before. And that's where the space in which we started Playwave. So we bring artists into that space, both digitally and also live. And so these are the things that we've kind of discovered, and we think are really exciting and interesting and helpful for the creative industries.
Very interesting,
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah.
So on that, of bringing artists and audience together, Keith, 6-8 does that really well. So what is how is this bringing together of an artist and audience? How has it been for both the artist and the audience? And is there any magic that's kind of come from that?
Constant magic is the answer. And look, obviously I've got a few stories, but first, I think it's interesting that already we've hit on some really key themes. So like the development of cultural spaces, however you see a cultural space, whether that's an online space or a physical space, is I think going to be a really interesting part of the conversation today, and also storytelling. which, when we talk about culture and the arts, that's really what we're getting at, is giving some kind of message and story. And from a live music perspective, I mean, it's the same. It's always been about telling a story, passing on a message. Before any of our cultures started writing, it was all about singing and using music as a way to perpetuate a message throughout the years. For us, that was a seminal part of forming our company. The core of what we are trying to do is to make it easier and more accessible for artists to give their message and give the things that they care about to the audience that are in front of them. And ideally to make that audience more intimate. So this can become a conversation between both sides. I remember at the end of last year, we got one of our artists, Sarah Frank, to come along to a friend of mine's birthday party up in Brisbane. And it was a fairly, intimate affair. There was like 15, 16 of us, I guess, in this big Queenslander house. It was at night time, and we'd set her up in the lounge room. She had a keyboard, and she plays like this fantastic soul and funk. And so she was doing outstanding gig. And we were around, eating our cheese and drinking our wine and having a great night. And about half an hour in, she came and joined us in the kitchen, like as you do in any normal party. And we're all having a chat. And invariably with any party, the conversation turns to relationships. So we started talking about relationships. And she said, we were talking about this situation where one of our friends had been friend zoned by this girl. And she went, wait here. Ran off, got a guitar, came up, sat on like the bench next to me and started playing this song that she'd written about a year ago about this guy that she'd friend zoned. And for me, I mean, it was an amazing moment and she's an amazing performer, but for me, that was like a click moment for, yes, this is what we do. This is what live music is about and should be about. It's about delivering a message through this medium and giving your art. So that's been what we are driving for in our company. I think there's a few. There's going to be some tensions in our discussion this afternoon, which is what makes this panel interesting. Look, I remember a conversation I had with my business partner about 5 years ago, which was one of the first seeds of 6/8, one of the first things that it grew out of. And we were talking about technology and how it was developing. Our fear was that technology would isolate people. We were going down a path where people would be stuck on their phone and wouldn't interact with each other to the degree that we do even now. And I mean, it's changed a lot in the last 10 years. We've gone down a path. I guess 6/8 was one of the reasons that we went down the path of 6/8 was because we wanted to give our little nudge to culture in Australia and hopefully the world, if we go that way, to use technology in a way that brings people face to face. And technology is one thing, but how we actually interact with it in a sociological sense, that's the real interesting guts of technological development. So if we can make that interaction about bringing people together in a room together and telling stories together, we think that's a really cool thing to do.
That's amazing. So, I mean, technology is allowing us to develop a greater sense of community. Now, Chantal, I know there's kind of, on this note, there's an interesting story on how the studio started. Do you want to tell that?
Okay. So the studio came from my own experience as 30 years, pretty well close to 30 years, working in the media industry as a factual filmmaker and documentary maker, and really a journalist as well, and then experiencing the impact of technology over that period of time and realising there was a lot of opportunities that came from that. And a few years ago then I did some research. I did my Masters of Screen Arts and Business, and I really wanted to do a deep dive into that. I really wanted to investigate this intersection of creative, technology and business. I did this, I'll try to keep this short, I did this through looking at Time Warner's Accelerator program, which is actually an investment fund, and the key finding was that we needed to have something like the studio. So I set about trying to make that happen, because allegedly I'd done a leadership course, and I just thought I was doing my master's.
And there was a meetup or something.
Yeah, okay. And so really, as a proof of concept as to whether there was a need for something like the studio, I established a meetup group, and the meetup group now has about 2,500 people, and that was really how we grew what is now the studio. And so what we would do is we would hold these events every month or more, and we actually did an event here about 2 years ago, very similar to this. And it was really, investigating that intersection between technology and creativity and business. And we're still doing it, but now we've got a home where people can come and do it.
And a growing community.
And a growing community,
that started with this digital kind of meetup group.
So it's really exciting. And I think really what's also important about what we're doing is, we are connecting, business and industry, with startups and education as well. So we've got, and that's reflected in who our foundation partners and sponsors are. So we've got people from the education sector, so universities, people like NIDA and AFTRS as well. We've also then got technology companies like Microsoft and Amazon, and then we've got amazing, creative companies that have been almost really the first wave of what we're now hoping to help, which started 30 years ago in the form of Animal Logic. So what we're saying is, there's all this next generation of companies. They're all here. They're probably all in the room, and we can help you. We want to help you be successful, and we want to sort of really take deep dives into technology. Connect globally as well, because we're sort of part of the startup culture as well. We knew as a startup, the studio, we needed to be global from day one. So we've actually been building out a global network. So we have strategic relationships with other similar hubs internationally. So our residents can connect with those. Places like Cyberport in Hong Kong, the New York Media Centre, which is a big hub in New York, the Hospital Club in London, they're about to open in LA. So already you've got this incredible network, because it's really about, at the heart of everything we do is community. And it all comes back to that. So very much, everyone, what everyone else has really been saying, that yes, we've got this technology, but it's people and community that are really connecting, at the heart of everything we do.
So Kate, with Playwave, so young people are used to this network and this kind of community because social media has been a part of their lives growing up. Do you have any advice for creative practitioners in how they can use this ability to build community to get their work out to young people?
Number one, talk to young people. Ask them what they're doing, observe how they're engaging, I guess, with culture, or what culture means to them online. Ask young people to come and work for you, I guess, as well. The thing about Playwave and Shopfront is it's run by young people, for young people, but also I think give them, opportunities to engage with the work you're doing as well. So, and what I mean by that is once you kind of do ask young people, or find just even a small group of young people that don't assume that they know everything about the work you're doing either. And like the great story about holding up the cassette tape and saying, who knows what this does? Like it's amazing, technology is happening so quickly that just to talk to them about the experience that and understanding that there's a real yearning for that as well. So really, it's so old school in that it's engage young people, and you will learn so much about the platforms that they have. For example, there's this lovely image that I always have when I'm working with the young people at Playwave of the young people in the streets, down in the alleys, like, and trying to go up to them and talk to them, and as you do they disperse and then they congregate somewhere else. There's such fluidity among platforms that young people are so agile within this space that it's really about finding synergies with them, and artists really do that. They really have a lot in common with young people, and young people are very creative and they don't realise it. So they're my general thoughts, I think. Yeah,
that's wonderful. I want to just go back to something Keith said, which was about one of the questions is how we use technology and our relationship to technology. And for you, Michaela, I think Indigenous people have a strong sense of community and a strong sense of the relationship with the land. How are they kind of placed to inform how we should potentially use technology?
We're the best placed. We've been doing this for at least 80,000 years. I like to think of our knowledge systems as we've got 80,000 years of the answers to any science question you could probably think about. We've been doing this for a very, very long time, and those knowledge systems have been passed down through our generations. So what I find so fabulous about working with Indigenous communities around the world, actually, in this kind of mixed and augmented reality space, is the way that our people think about things hasn't been educated out of us with a Western paradigm education system. We think about things differently, and that's such a fantastic asset for doing real breakthrough innovations, because when I brought mixed reality into the community I was living in the Northern Territory, I didn't go, hey, let's do some augmented reality stuff, guys. I just put an example of an architectural building and a free app from the internet and said, just have a play with that and see what it does. And then all these ideas from the community just exploded, and they're like, we could do this and we could do this. And then when we got the prototypes happening, the whole community was on board. I was like, right, we want to do, let's do our biggest site. Can we do this where we can imagine the Garbo dreaming, which is the giant green ant dreaming, on the floodplain, and we can invite tourists to the floodplain and then they can see Garbo for the first time. Like we don't feel like when we're explaining it that people really see it the way that we do. So yeah, we have so much opportunity, not just mixed and augmented realities. Like I'm working with communities around the world looking at artificial intelligence for Earth. Like, how are we going to deploy environmental sensors to help us make quicker decisions about the impact of climate change on our communities? How do we use blockchain to get rid of this problem of fake Indigenous art? Like, that's a massive solution right there. So we're working with some communities to try and build these solutions in different technologies. So, you know, it's not that our people don't want to do tech. It's we often don't have the opportunity, and it's like the unknown unknown. So unless you're really introduced to an idea, then you can't really take it that step further. And I think one of the coolest things was 3 years ago when to do the cultural sites, we had to use drones because the sites were so huge. So I had to learn how to be a drone pilot and do photogrammetry of these huge cultural sites. And I brought 5 Indigenous people along with me and said, you're going to learn how to do this as well. So they became qualified RPAS certified drone pilots, so they can do photogrammetry through their own sites now. But one of the aunties said, can I hop in the drone? And I was like, not this one, but that's a great idea. And then this year, people hopping in drones in China. So just like...
She was on it.
She was on it. Yeah.
I think you used a term that I wonder if everyone knows, photogrammetry.
Okay, yeah.
Do you want to maybe
explain photogrammetry?
To explain?
Yep, so basically we can take an object like this, which when we take a photograph, traditionally it's two-dimensional. If we take photographs all around this glass with a 90% overlap, we can create what we call a point cloud of this. And then we put a mesh and a texture on it, which in a computer, you can then manipulate this object in 3 dimensions. So you can look at every dimension of that glass. We do that with cultural places. So we can have a photogrammetry record of everything that's happening with that site. We can even see termite trails and everything on the rock art. So we can zoom in and say, what's happening to this site? With climate change, with buffalo rubbing against the rock art, with all these different all these things that rock art faces right now, we can design some solutions just knowing a little bit more about the site using technology.
Wow, amazing. So I wanted to, I was teaching a class last week at UTS, and we were discussing the future of work. And there was a lot of discussion on job losses due to automation. But what also came up was the fact that in this world where there will be a lot of job losses, the creative industries kind of fare pretty well. So I just wanted to ask all of you guys, you can jump in, whoever, is this a good time to be a creative?
Yes.
I think it's the best time to be creative. I agree.
And do we need to train more people to have these artistic, creative skills?
I don't know that we need to train more people. I'm not sure that that's the the way that I think about it. I think we need to say that in this world that we're entering into, where we may have a lot more time available, this is actually a great opportunity to do the stuff in life that we really want to do. And I think most people have some creative outlet that they really, really love. So to, I don't know, go into this period with a sense of optimism, but in looking at that optimism, we need to have the structures in place to be able to support that. So direct technology down pathways where people can spend this potentially large amount of extra time they're going to have to pursue their creative interests. I think that's an amazing way to spend our time.
I might share a story that I was having a conversation with a machine language translation person, as you do, and they were saying, all these translators, like these guys doing Auslan here, they're really worried about technology because they won't have a role anymore when we can already do like translator through multiple platforms. It's pretty accurate. But he was saying something that fascinated me, because when you have someone doing a translation for you, they apply like a filter sometimes over what they're saying so it doesn't offend the other person. So they can be a little bit strategic and a little bit political, and when we go to the United Nations and we do work there, we translate all our information into 5 languages. And I've seen this in action where someone I know is saying something and the translator's softening that language so the other person can continue that dialogue. And that's a great role for a human that won't disappear, I don't think, is we can read each other, and I don't know that computers are going to get that right for a very, very long time. So I think that the human sensibility of the gift of humanity that we've all been given will have a stronger role in the future when certain things that are process orientated and repeatable are taken over by machines.
And the enjoyment of actually doing it.
Yeah,
I mean, sure, it might be cool to plug something in where you don't have to learn a language, but learning a language can be fun too. So why limit that?
Very, really.
So I think creatives just, creative people that are creative. Well, I suppose a few things. Skills are definitely transferable, and I think being a creative, being an artist, there's an incredible skill set that comes with practicing, your art, your craft, and those skills can be really valuable and are very valuable in a business setting, and they differentiate you because, I think being able to see things and think about things quite differently is a very valuable asset these days. So, and also, creatives are used to making something from nothing often, and that's a really amazing skill to have as well. And so I think that's definitely, the nature of work is changing, how we work, the proliferation of co-working spaces. Yeah, I do think it's, that intersection of creativity and business and technology is a super exciting space.
Agreed. So Kate, with this younger generation that have grown up creating stuff, are they well placed, do you think, in an era of automation?
Well, I was just thinking, the discussion was reminding me of the story of the economist Keynes, who was actually on the board of the British Arts Council. He set it up. He set the arts councils up as we know today, and he said by about the year 2000, 2010, we'd be living in a leisure economy. And I think, I don't think it's a coincidence that all these platforms appeared and have been using up all our leisure time to generate things. And then I was listening to a podcast the other day about the Finnish experiment of everyone receiving a wage. And so if you actually are supported, like how more creative will you be? So I think it's already happening, and it'd be interesting. Yeah, we'll just wait and see. Maybe we will become more creative, and young people are already doing it. They just don't realise it. Maybe that's our job to them understand how valuable their output it really is. So.
So another question for all of you guys, and you can jump in, whoever wants to answer first. So as we sort of mentioned, I mentioned at the beginning, in an age of disruption, it's quite easy to sort of see the negatives and the challenges that that we face. But each of you guys have really decided to be disruptors and create something new and take advantage of this. What advice do you have for anybody out there who also wants to be a disruptor?
My piece of advice is don't quit your day job straight away.
Yeah.
Honest
I
advice.
did that, and it was like so bad to try and live. I was like living off lentils and making assessments about whether it was more important to drive my kids to school or drive to work. So it was really, really hard financially. If you can maintain a day job and start your passion and start incubating and talk to these guys, it would be a much better approach than what I did, which was I had a great government job. I walked in, I handed my pass in, said I quit effective immediately, and I walked out.
Wow, that's
I wouldn't recommend doing that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so, I read all these startup books before I did, and they're like, it's like jumping out of a plane and assembling the parachute on the way down. It's okay to do that. It's a really hard way to do it. And it takes a really, really long time. And the times that I've been in the bottom of my shower in the fetal position, just crying my eyes out and wondering why the hell I did this, it's just not worth it. Yeah, I'd do it the other way if I got to do it again.
And maybe potentially in the future there would be more support.
Yeah, and I think that was something I mentioned to you when we chatted earlier. I don't like to stereotype or play the black card, but it is really hard when you're a female Indigenous person working in cutting edge technology in a remote community. It's like so far out here. It's not even on the radar for investors or people that can help you. And when you're living in a place like Kakadu, like where the hell do you go to get support to do this?
But interestingly, I guess, that lack of kind of local community ended up kind of being a benefit because you sort of went really global, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Well, I thought, I'm not going to get any support in the town here because I'm the only one with a drone and I'm the only one with some idea about what mixed reality is. So I'm just going to Google people that can help me. And so, yes, working over Skype led me to actually work globally before I worked locally with people that could help, which expanded my horizons in ways that have really benefited now, but it was so hard.
So Keith, any advice for people who want to be a disruptor from your point of view?
Yeah, I think two big pieces of advice. So the first would be know what you want to change in the world. Know what your values are for this entity that you're making, like whether it's a company or a not-for-profit or whatever. Know what the core of it is, because every day you'll have decisions that you need to make against that. You'll have to make choices, and sometimes the choices really suck. But if you have values, really strong values at the core of it, then you always have something to hold on to and go, I'm making this decision for the right reasons. That would be the first one. And the second one would be try and have fun. We're so lucky, particularly living in a country like ours, that we have the opportunity to be able to start things like this and empower people. So, sometimes you're going to fail, but have fun and make the things that are tough, things that you enjoy. If you can outsource the stuff that you don't enjoy, that's the way to do it. Like concentrate on the stuff as much as you can that you do enjoy. That'd be my advice.
Hey, any advice from you?
I have an office at the studio and I really appreciate being in a community or a group. And I think it's being a disruptor or being in that environment and being an artist are pretty similar. I think the artist maybe is the original disruptor. People.
Maybe.
So that sense of vulnerability is always much more kind of a creative experience if it's done together, and having spaces where you have investors and you have creatives all together, it always makes everything better. I just, like, I can't. And so if you can do that online, but also in person, as well, which is what Playwave does. It actually brings young people into live spaces and say, look, this is really cool, what we're doing. Artists, fabulous.
Chantal?
Yeah. Oh, well, what I should say is that, you know, I definitely have experienced, you know, the pain of a startup, because we are a startup, and I did actually bootstrap. What I left out before was I actually bootstrapped the studio for 2 years, and that was really hard. And so it's fantastic that we got there. And so, what was the question?
Have you got any advice for people who want to be disruptors?
Well, just you got to become either be a resident of the studio, or be a 99. This is a shameless plug, or be a $99 annual membership, because we want to sort of have both ends ends of the spectrum, because as a resident you're ready, the timing's right. You can pay for your desk. It's meaningful for you to be there, and you can make use of everything that's going on, or just connect with the community for $99 a year and get invitations to free events once we get our programs up and running and all the studios working, discounts on all of those things, and just be connected, really. And moving forward, we are going to have a fund. We will have our first pitch night at the end of probably next month. The aim is to fill the room with investors and get them investing in, the next wave of media tech, creative tech startups.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one more question before I turn it over to the audience for some questions. So start thinking questions that you might like to ask this panel. So there's a lot of new technologies that are coming out. But there's also a lot of shifting worldviews in terms of how we kind of see things and how we kind of value things. Give me a couple of things that you're excited about, either tech or changing worldviews.
Oui.
Oh, tough one.
I'm working with some people in the middle of the Amazon at the moment, called the Yawanawas people, and we're doing an augmented reality project on some traditional knowledge system from their shama, and they want to put it on a t-shirt because everyone's wearing t-shirts out there, and that's how they want to communicate their story. I think there's nowhere on planet Earth that people aren't interested in being a part of this new world that we're all living in here. Like, they say that innovations are something about it's not always at the same place at the same time, right? So we've got innovations here that people can only dream about in other places around the world, and they've got innovations there that we can only dream about in our world. So I think this connection across the whole world and the insights that we can have from sharing, just being in the same place. Like, there's 2,500 Indigenous leaders that get together every year in New York, and we work really hard together for 2 weeks to change outcomes for Indigenous peoples globally. But it's those times when you're having dinner at 3 o'clock in the morning because you've all been working on your interventions, that these conversations happen, and the ideas that come from people that have been in a completely different world situation to you, and the meshing of those ideas is just so exciting. It's like the neurons of the brain are kind of connecting together for the human population. And I think that's really exciting.
And are people, are you able to, with technology, continue those conversations?
Yeah.
Because the world is becoming more global?
Yeah, and we're all super heavy on Facebook for the first 3 years. Now everyone's shifted to WhatsApp, and they're like, we don't want to do Facebook anymore because we're worried about traditional knowledge systems and nutraceutical and pharmaceutical companies kind of spying on us through these channels so they can commercialise our traditional knowledge systems. We're moving to WhatsApp so we can have a bit more of a private chat. So, yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Technology you're excited about, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's the huge one, right? Is connectivity. I mean, that's a massively exciting one. That's hard to go above that. Another really interesting space, I guess, is the freedom, the general freedom over life, I guess. As we talk about these changes, about disconnection from actual physical sites to do work, and just to live. I mean, I think in the current generation that's coming through, there's a lot less dependence on staying in one location for their entire lives or even large portions of their lives. And I think that's very exciting. I think that we're going to see a lot more throughout the world population, ideally, as development happens across the world, we'll see a lot more mixing, and I think that can only be a good thing for the world.
And what will that do to music?
It's exciting. It's a
Yeah.
lot of sharing, right? And a lot of collaboration, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And that comes back to Michaela's point. I mean, you know, we're going down the path of some beautiful collaboration in arts and culture, but in thinking generally. And it's going to open up some pretty exciting doorways, I think.
Very exciting. Okay.
Other than like in what I call in digitisation, like creating spaces that are not controlled just by one group, but having other knowledge being created in those spaces, I'm really interested in how story changes as our formats for telling, sharing stories and information changes with VR and AR and different platforms, how story changes and how you have to write story and how to create stories in different places is changing. So I'm very interested in that and how you tell stories. We now have virtual reality experiences where you can choose your own adventure or choose your own outcomes, and you can have multiple outcomes in different worlds. So how you write for that and how you is starting to change as well. So.
And what advice would you have for any practitioners who are entering? I mean, there is an established film grammar and language,
Yeah.
but when you walk into VR, that doesn't really work anymore, because what is the role of the director or the audience when they can choose where they look? What advice do you have for practitioners on how to work with those different mediums?
I
think it's sort of more related to theatre, isn't it? And so it's really a coming together almost of theatre performance and film language.
Yes.
You know, mashing of. So it's really, you know, who knows where that's going to go. Yeah.
Yeah, and that the storytelling happens, like, I don't know if you've seen some stories that all of a sudden, like, you have to incorporate, like, dance is incorporated too, because as the viewer, you're moving around, you've got all these different spaces, and experiential live experiences are now happening online as well, and how do you write for that? And you're right, the theatre practitioners kind of understand those spaces intuitively. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you are a writer, get ready to write for not just a linear 3-act structure, because
That's part of the excitement, though, isn't it? I mean, where something isn't defined and you're building something new.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of work around this in academia around socio-technical systems where you have new niches that come along and a language develops. And if you're an initial practitioner in there developing that language,
Pretty exciting.
it's a pretty cool place to be, I reckon.
Yeah, I just saw a film that the UNRs did with a lady called Lynette, who does amazing virtual reality immersive stuff. And you're in Yawanawa's territory going through tribal ceremony with Ayushka. So you're part of that story now because you can have a human connection, to like, I was brought to tears this morning just from a story that I saw that someone sent to me from, it was called The First Hike. It's about refugees being welcomed into our national parks and taking their first hike in Australia and how much that changes them. I think that power of storytelling to bring you to tears and to be walking in the shoes of someone that I have a limited connection with, that changes things, because now you can go, yes, I want to act and I want to help and I want to do something about that.
So it gives you some agency within the story. So does that like give you some more skin in the game?
Yeah, exactly. You're not a consumer of it anymore, you're part of the journey.
It's exciting. Chantal, any technologies or worldviews that...
Well, I mean, technology is really just a tool, isn't it? So, but, you know, I'm excited about people taking ownership of their own data. And so there's a whole new, there's a whole lot of stuff happening out there. And the power coming back to the individual and us having ownership of our data, how we want to use it, how we want to share it. Because that's our own intellectual property, isn't it? To Michaela's point.
kind of like our own creativity as well. And our output.
And do you have any startups or anything in mind when you mention that? Is there any...
There's just some really interesting people around that are talking about this. So come to one of our events maybe soon.
So many plugs.
Sorry, that's terrible.
Well, look, I think that's a lovely place to end today's discussion. I would like everybody to give a warm hand to our wonderful panel. And can we give a big warm hand to our amazing interpreters? And to Create New South Wales. And thank you guys all for coming out and joining in this discussion.